Okay, so anyway, sorry about that. Well, I will give you a few seconds to think, what is this? While you're doing that, I have to thank everyone or Wildscreen for being here. It's a big honor, and especially thank to Ross for being so patient with me. So, well, this picture is what I'm going to talk about today, and you can think what this is because, well, the next picture I will show is taken half a second before this, and it's this. It's the first and probably the last wedding picture I ever will take. But I have to, there's some friends of mine, I have to do it my way. And it's all about what I'm going to talk about today. It's this fascinating millimeter that divides the two different worlds, above and below water. And also there was a famous Norwegian singer that made a song some years ago which the title was "When 1 millimeter is enough." And 1 millimeter can be enough in quite a few cases, like this next picture. This guy, he was desperate. He wanted to do this naked, and this pole, skiing pole, is marking where my camera is. So my camera is in fact here. So one thing I'm not going to show you, I'm not going to show you that picture from that. But I can also tell you, well, and what we did, we want to make a practical joke. So this was really lower, so we put it a little higher when he was running, so you can see his face. And it went well. I can tell you there was nothing left on the stick when he passed over, so it was good. So who am I? Yeah, well, Ross said I'm a professor at the University of Tromsø. I work with these animals, other animals as well. What I do, I track them. I put electronic devices like small computers on them and try to track them. And I do it with salmon, halibut, and recently also with whales, which you will see later. Well, I see a benefit in this. How I do my photography, I do it often like a scientist. I make project out of it. I also use my knowledge, which I find to have a great benefit sometimes because I know the story, I know the animals, I know where to find them, and my science also brings me to areas where other people usually don't go. So, and as Ross said, I also use this for teaching, and I use also my photography to tell and publish my stories about my science, like this one. We were tagging halibut. I want to have that tagging, making a catch and release study. Here we are releasing it. So I do that a lot, and that's why I also can combine my photography, and that's why I also combine my photography with a lot of my activities. And all my photography, or at least 95% of it, is taken locally. And I've been really fascinated about the Arctic coast. I grew up in a small whaling and fishing community in Steigen in northern Norway, just above the polar circle. This is my father, by the way. So I grew up with that, and also being very fascinated about the culture, the people, and also the nature in it. Then, when I started studying, I moved up to the Tromsø, city of Tromsø, which is even further north, 70 degrees north. And well, the good thing by being a photographer in this area is that you have all these changes in season, you have all these changes in light through the year. It's a cold area, and so if you can cope with that, it's just a perfect area as being a photographer. This picture is where I live, the town where I work. I moved out on the countryside now, but it has the benefit. It has, like summer, we have 2 months of sun, so we can take picture all day, all 24 hours. And of course, in wintertime we have the opposite. We have 2 months with no sun, but there is still light, and the light there is weak, but it's so intense. So if you could find that, and of course then we have the northern light, which is also fascinating and becoming very popular, particularly among tourists. Honestly, I'm starting to get a little bored about it. So, but it sounds strange, but it's anyway, it's nice. And of course, we also have the nature just outside of our door. I live here. I can hear the whales breathing while I go to bed. And it's not a joke. I can literally do it. So we have these whales that have been arriving lately, and I'll tell more about it. Well, I not only take split picture, I try to take different kind of picture. As I said, I combine it also with my spare interest, like skiing. And this picture kind of illustrates a lot of things what I interesting. Well, one thing is a split picture. I do some underwater picture. This is a composite picture with 7 pictures in a row, taking in 2 seconds, and I stitch them afterwards. So, and the culture with the fisherman, and there's also wildlife up there, but that's stuffed. I tried to get the, I got it from work because we couldn't get the birds. There's a lot of birds outside, and I get this to feed it, but it wouldn't come in. It was too crowded with people. But it kind of illustrates everything. Well, my interest for split picture started really when I was young, and when I got my first diving mask. I remember I walked down to the ocean, and I remember also it was freezing cold, and I put my mask on and I put my head below, and it became totally quiet, or you can hear some sound, and I put it up, and it was totally different again. And I also the things that I can see in there, it was like it really fascinated me. It was like 2 different worlds divided with this thin little millimeter. So I still can remember that, and I think that's what fascinated me. And I was also wondering when you are standing above water and see into what kind of monster is down there. So that's what I also try to not necessarily find monsters, but try to show about that. When you do split pictures, there's not a straightforward thing, but there is thing on the market that you can do it quite easily. But you have to be aware of certain things. There is some physics behind it, because the water often works as a lens itself. So it creates different infinity focus and things like that. So taking split pictures in highlight conditions is fairly easy. When it comes to low light condition, then it starts to get difficult, and I'll get back to that. Another thing with split picture, you want to take a split picture, it has to tell a story both above and below. So there can be 2 different stories, but usually the stories are connected. So I try to always think of that the picture should tell a story, both ways. And also, well, you have a split picture with the surface, but a split picture doesn't need to be at the surface. You can utilize, if you know the physics, you can utilize this, what you call the Snell window, to see from below, and you can see what's happening above. Or you can do it opposite. You can see from above and see what happens below the surface. This is a low light, and this is a special technique, though, which I used to, where I have adjusted the focus and aperture during the exposure of the picture. It's a single frame. So I started out figuring out how could I take this split picture during low light conditions. So I started working with another light. I will try to, well, because this is what had happened. It is dark, and we have this jellyfish blooming during winter time. So I wanted to focus to take picture like that. So I started out with both these pictures are double exposures, but they are done at the same location and in camera and during the same time. So I first took those, and then I exposed up on the next file the northern light and adjusted the focus. So then I wanted to take a step forward to try challenge myself to take this in one single frame. And these pictures are single frame pictures. This is same techniques as I used for that trout earlier, and this as well. This was a challenge. I'm never going to do that again. It was really hard work and it was cold. But I used also my skills as a fish biologist, how to attract the fish and so on. So I used 2-3 weeks in the field to make picture like that. But then I made my own system for using, being able to adjust the focus and the aperture through the picture made. So I first flashed this, then the fish disappeared, and then I switched the focus, and then I opened the aperture to expose the rest. And the funny thing is that when you do that with the flash, you also get mirrored a mirror up at the surface. Well, I'm going to show you here the next. This is a very short part of a recent documentary about my photography. So I'm going to show you a little glimpse of how I work, and you will get an impression here.
Kan vi vel klippe i. Ja, det kan du klippe. Det er tungt.
My father.
Nei, nå skal jeg så det blir mørkt. Du ser jo både stuken og alt.
Ja, var ikke det tøft?
Du ser ut som du skal ut i V-stil litt sånn.
Ja, du synes du er midt i en sving.
Ja.
Så tanken er da at jeg skal håpe å få en spekkhogger foran en fiskebåt som driver og drar denne nota med sild. Men gjerne at vi ser folk og fugl og sånt bakgrunn.
Det er jo lettere å vinne Joker Nord enn det her.
Den der liker jeg. Den der er perfekt. På vei opp. Oi. Yes. Yes! Woo! Woo! Well, that's often how I work, and what you saw there was also I'm making my own system for being able to take a split picture in low light condition, which is a challenge, and that's why you rarely see these kind of pictures. There is some physical things you have to cope with, and I can probably talk for 2 hours about that, so I'm not going to go into the details. But anyway, I'll tell a little about what's happening. It's we have this what you call I would like to call a whale feast, which has happened. It's a new phenomenon. It started out in 2011, and then in 2012 it really took off, where the whales arrive during wintertime. they can arrive any time now. They can arrive today or tomorrow, in fact. It's usually this time, and then they stay for 3-4 months. But the reason why it's not the whales that are the key species. It's the Atlantic herring. And for some reason, the Atlantic herring have now decided to overwinter in the fjords outside my house, in fact, and in the Northern Norwegian fjords for some unknown reason. We see that it's probably moving north, might be related to climate and climate change, moving further from north. But this has happened recently, and it seems to come back every year. And it's also some theories about how that I'm not going to go into. But this is why the whales arrive, to feed on this overwintering herring. The herring is then overwintering for some months, and then it's moving further south to spawn. And it's easier for the whales to catch the herring during or close to land. And it's dark usually, particularly during the 2 months of no sun. But that doesn't stop the whales that are feeding all day, really. During both daytime, there's still some light enough to take picture during day or midday, but it's a little more challenging during night. And I developed a flash system to be able to do that. And then, of course, it's amazing to be out there because you have the light, you have the moonshine, and you have the northern light. This is, by the way, also a double exposure, but the same way it's done on the same location, about the same location, and at the same time. So we have all these humpback whales arriving, and the thing is that the herring has decided to overwinter just in the migration path when these humpbacks move from the Arctic and down to the southern part on what we call a sex trip to mate and give birth on more southern latitudes. And then they have a pit stop here to feed. But it's also the killer whales that are following the herring more or less year around. And the funny thing is that you also see that for probably the only place in the world you can see that the killer whales and the humpbacks, well, not cooperate, but they have some kind of sort of cooperation. And it's usually the humpbacks that steal from the killer whales and not the opposite. But this is killer whales feeding. There's some herring here that's feeding. And I tried to snorkel a lot of them. And sometimes you get them really, really close. This is super wide angle, and it's probably like that. I could probably have touched them when you have that. But still, this feed this is often the light you get midwinter. It's still light, but it's no sun, but it's very intense. But also for the killer whales, they continue to feed during nighttime. So here I have to use a flash system together with all these split pictures. And well, it's not only the whales that arrive and want to have a part of the herring, it's also, of course, the fishing boat. And I've been really fascinated also about this seemingly some kind of interaction between the fishing boats and the whales. And what we often see is that the fishing boats might, in some cases, localize the herring by looking at where they find the whales. And the whales often, particularly the killer whales, but also the humpbacks, follow the fishing boats to get a free meal when they retrieve the catch. So this is seemingly a win-win situation, and you see this situation is increasing for every year. You can see that the whales get more aggressive, and there's more whale, and it's crazy. This picture, in fact, there's 4 killer whales. There's one up on this, there's one here, and there's one under here. So these can be hundreds around. And it's becoming a problem. It's becoming a problem for the fishermen because they can destroy the fishing nets. But it can also be a problem for the whales that can potentially get entangled and injured by this fishing equipment. So I'm going to show you one story. We have released quite a few of these whales together with the Coast Guard and others. Well, this is not a good picture, but this is a picture of the tail. And we usually picturize the tails because this is like a finger mark. We can tell which individual there is. And until now, we have always 1,000 individuals identified in this area. And this one was the first we have ever seen. We have never seen this whale before. So I pictured that. And just half a day after I pictured this, we found it again, but we found it in this situation. It was entangled, what we thought was fishing line or rope for a gill net or something. I pictured it first just to see how the rope was in order to try to release it. And the condition was really hard. It was during the night. It was windy. It was snowing. It was me and a friend out trying desperately to release this whale. I'm going to show you a little impression how it was. It's not a good footage, but so we were fighting, and the funny thing was that in the beginning the whale was a little afraid, and then it kind of understood that we were there for helping him. So he came all the way into us, and at several occasions I was holding around his snout, clapping him. He came into the boat. He was 3 times larger than the boat, and we desperately tried to cut this line. Eventually, we called the Coast Guard, and they came and they tried as well. They couldn't release it at that time because we couldn't. We tried with knives, and it was the knives. It was so hard. This rope was so hard. We couldn't say why can't we release it? Then the fire department, the day after, got out, borrowed my boat and got out, and they had a diver down, and they realized when they tried to cut this rope, it was not a rope. It was an internet cable. It was an internet cable to my community and all the other communities around. So eventually, they tried to cut it, but they couldn't. They came up in the boat, and suddenly the whale was free. I had a tag on, but we never heard any from the tag. So I don't know what happened. It swam away. So hopefully it's still alive. And was really emotional to be there. But the thing with this is that because of that, I was blamed. My Coast Guard and the fire department was blamed for this cutting this cable. So we got a bill in the post for 1.5 million Norwegian crowns, which is about 150,000 pounds. So we had to put a lawyer, and we never heard of it a bit more, but we didn't pay it, of course. But now I'm getting to the end, so I will show you. Now I have shown you or visualized you like the splits image of the above and below pictures. But I will also, I said that the sounds are often very different from above and below. So now I'll show you both. And this sound you will hear is authentic. It's me that taken it up. And it's probably from some of the same whales as you will see here. Well, this is my last picture. This is a dear friend of mine. And the thing is that this is, what for me is nature photography. It's about becoming friends with nature and not pursuing nature or trying to pursue it to get the perfect picture. In order to get the perfect and nice picture, you need to make friends with them, to get close and get them to trust you. So with that, I will thank you for your attention.